Hey there, everybody. Just a quick little video to show you how to create a scatter plot in Excel 2010. I had made a video from 2007, and I think some of you might have that version, but in case you have 2010, I figured we'd get you into that version as well. So this is the data we were playing with in Math 105 this morning. Real simple. You've got car speeds, 0, 20, 30, and so forth. And then you've got, from the Oregon Driver's Manual, stopping distances on dry pavement and stopping distances on icy pavement. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a scatter plot, and then we're going to mess with the axes, fancy it up a little bit, and then look for some trend curve behavior on this. So we'll do one thing at a time. Let's start with a scatter plot. So in 2010, it's actually really nice. You just make sure your data is aligned like this. Now I'm going to make actually two scatter plots simultaneously, and you can do one at a time if you want to, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and select everything, including the headers up here, and then I'm going to go up to Insert, and then I'm going to go over to this chart ribbon, which looks a little bit complex. But these charts all have little different names. You got a bar chart, you've got whatever this thing is, hierarchy chart. I don't even know what some of these things are. But I'm looking for a scatter plot. That one looks to me, yep, that's the scatter plot right there. So I'm going to left click on that, and then I get some options. I'm going to go with the most basic option, which is this top left. And what we're going to see is, I'm going to make this a little bigger so we can see it. What you've got now is a chart that has all the numbers from the original table represented. You've got the speeds down here from 0 up to, well, it goes to 90. We can change that if you want. So 0 up to 90 in increments of 10, 10, 20, 30, 40. And then up here, you've got, these are distances in feet. Now, it might be a little bit hard to be able to know what this chart is standing for, because notice it says chart title, and it's not very descriptive. So the first thing I'm going to do, even though we're technically done, is I'm going to click on that chart title up there, and I'm going to change it to, let's see, stopping distances, and then I'm going to go dry versus icy roads. Okay, and then you can type it, you can label it anything you want. While we're up here, actually, while we're in the editing phase here, if you think that title needs to be, say, somewhere else, for example, larger fonts, or moved over, you can move it around this way, you can drag it and put it anywhere you need it to be. I kind of like it up top. I'm going to leave it there. And just something else, you can also mess with things like the fill. You can fill up the back with a color, which I don't particularly care. The border, you can mess with that too. I mean, there's lots of options in here, and I don't want to get too carried away with that now, because I want to focus on a couple main edits. But as far as like fonts, one of my favorite things you can do in 2010 is just highlight by clicking on the title, and then going to the Home tab, and then using the up arrow, and that actually makes the font increase. I think that's one of the more powerful and easier to use features. So that's just my opinion. I'm going to close this over here. Okay, so now we've got a nice title. One thing I don't like is the position of this little bad boy down here. This is called the legend, and this explains to you what the dots you're looking at are. I'm going to put it up here where it's a little bit easier to see. And then I'm going to do that font move again, where I make the fonts larger. I wonder if I make it big enough, will they? Yeah, I like that. I like that. So now if I made it big enough, they actually put them above each other. So now you can see that the blue dots are the blue data points here, and the red dots are right here. So you can see that you've got definitely a difference. It's taking more time to stop on ice than on the dry pavement, which makes perfect sense, I hope. Okay, I want to do a couple more edits to this chart, if it's okay with you all. I'm going to add axes, axis titles. We've already got axes, they're right here. And you know what I'm going to do also, since I'm kind of on a kick, I'm going to make the fonts bold and a little bit larger on the actual axis numerical values, make them stand out a little bit more. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to put the actual axis titles down here. So this is where we're going to get into. So if you click on the chart, this little green arrow up here, very, very important, that adds chart elements in. So I'm going to click on that. Notice how it already has axes highlighted, chart title highlighted, grid lines highlighted, and legend highlighted. All those things are already present. So watch this. If I unclick legend, the legend goes away. If I click it again, it's back. Of course, now I put it back over here, but we can move it over here if we want and make it bigger like it was. I screwed everything up by turning it off and then turning it back on, but that's okay. I think we get the point. Here, I'll drag it. Now it looks just about where it was before. So anyway, I'm going to click on that green arrow again, and we're going to add some axis titles. So I'm going to click this little arrow, see a little extra arrow over here. Now one thing you can do, rather than clicking that little arrow, is just hit the checkbox. And I don't know if you noticed it, but two little boxes showed up. Axis title here, vertical, and axis title here, horizontal. So we can do it that way. Since I already did it, we'll just stick with that way. And then to change the actual title of those axes, you just double click and then you highlight the text. So down here, it's speed in miles per hour. And I'm going to go ahead and make the font on that one larger like I did before. Okay, so now you see there's definitely an issue now in that the axis is interrupting the graph. Now here's something we can learn, another kind of neat little move here. If you hit this part, not the entire graph, but if you click just the rectangle part in the middle, you can then grab it and kind of move it and bump it up a little bit to make more room. And that way it gets the axis title off of the axis labels. So speed miles per hour, now you can see 10, 20, 30, 40 miles per hour. So we can move these bad boys around a little bit like that, and it just makes more room for things like axes titles. So now up here, I'm having a hard time because it's, there we go, I'll just delete. This is the stopping, oops, distance in feet. Okay, and the same thing, I'm going to go ahead and click on that and make the font bigger. Hopefully you're okay with reading the font sideways like that. You don't have to leave it sideways like that. If you want to change that, we can go over to, I believe it's text options over here. Let's just see if this is right. I always forget where these things are. Text options, no line, vertical alignment, here we go. So text direction, rotate. We can also make it horizontal like that. We can make it, I don't know why you do that. You can make it stacked like, I'm just going to leave it back the way it was. No, how was it? It was this, right? Yeah, I'm going to leave it like that. And if you don't like it, you can change it to a different way. That's totally fine with me. I guess what I'm trying to get at here is you've got definitely got some options with what you can mess with. So now I'm pretty stoked. This is looking pretty good. I mean, it's very much clearer now than it was when we just originally dropped it in, because now you can actually see what's going on. The only thing I might consider changing it, and now that I'm looking at it, is these dots are kind of small. So I'm thinking maybe what we do is we change the size of these dots. So what I did was I double clicked on one of those dots, and you see how it said format data point? I think we mess around with that a little bit. Let's go to fill marker, and somewhere down here has got to be a size. Here it is. Width, I bet you that's the one right there. Unfortunately, it looks like it's only changing the one. So now I'm going to select the entire data value. There we go. So what I did was, and this is something I'm still getting used to actually in Microsoft, the Excel 2010 version, is clicking one data point versus clicking all of them. And that's just one of those things I've gotten very much used to. If you have something selected and you want the rest of it, click off and then click back on, and then notice how this little menu over here is updating with you. That seems to work pretty well. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing down here. Marker, width, and just kind of blow it up. You can also choose different markers besides dots, but dots are fine, little tiny circles. Okay, so I'm going to close that bad boy there. All right, so now it's a little easier to see now. I think it's a little bit easier to see those data points. Okay, so in class, we talked about those looking quadratic. They look like they are in a quadratic kind of pattern versus a linear pattern. And I do believe that they are increasing quadratically. If you don't believe why, we'll talk about it in class, and you can send me an email if you're not in my classes. But there's definitely a curvature that's apparent in these. These are not linear, and you can look at it very quickly to see. For example, between 0 and 20 feet, the braking distance only goes up about 100. Well, between 20 and 40, it goes up what is that, 200, 250 feet. That can't be linear because we're getting a much quicker rise over the same run. So now what I want to show you is how to drop in a trend curve to look at the overall behavior if you were to look at the numbers like 10 miles an hour and 45 miles an hour and 35 miles an hour and so forth. So again, click on the chart, up to the little green plus sign, chart elements. And now down to trend line, but definitely don't just check that box. Go over to this little arrow over here to the right. I've noticed this is the better way to do it. So arrow, more options. Now it's going to ask you which data set would you like to mess with. Let's do it the dry pavement first. There's the dry pavement. Now when you pops open, you get this wonderful little, I love this menu on the trend line options. It drops in by default a linear trend line. Now that linear trend line is not fitting the data for a couple reasons. The biggest one that I see is you can actually see the curvature now. The data goes above the line, below, further away, coming closer, right about at, and now over again. That's definitely a pattern that the trend line is not doing a very good job of describing. A much better description, and we're going through this part kind of quickly because we did this in class together, is a polynomial of order 2, which is Excel talk for a parabola. And that's exactly what's going on with this. Scientists have figured out this stopping distance is related to a quadratic equation, which is a parabolic equation. So here you go. Here's the trend curve. It's not a trend line anymore as much as it's a trend curve. If you're interested in the equation, you can hit display equation on chart. What that does is it drops the equation up right there. If you want, you can make the fonts larger so it's a little clearer to see. As a matter of fact, I'm going to get even fancier and I'm going to change the font color to blue so it matches the blue dots, and that's the dry pavement. Now some other neat things about these trend lines, you can set the intercept so that it goes through 0, which this one should go through, and it algebraically messes and changes so that the intercept doesn't go through the actual literal best fit. If you click on that, it reshuffles the data so that it actually goes through the origin, and that's a much easier, I believe, a much easier equation to look at. I'm going to go ahead and use that one. But now we also would like a trend line perhaps through this data set over here. So once again, I'm going to close all this out and grab the green cross, the chart element, go for trend line, more options, and now select icy pavement. And once again, it uses the red linear trend line first. So we're going to stick, I think, with polynomial order 2. I think it again is parabolic. The only thing that's increasing is the stopping distance because of the lowered friction on ice. And I think the same thing. Display the equation and set the intercept to 0. And I think I'm going to go ahead and make this bad boy red to match that one. There we go. It's not exactly the right color, but it's closer than blue, right? I can put it over here maybe. So now you've actually got some equations that you can pull that describe to you if you input a certain speed, you can tell the stopping distance. I think police, from what I understand, police use this to figure out how fast cars were going at accident scenes. They take skid mark measurements after accidents and say, okay, well this thing skidded blah, 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 and they reverse engineer that using these equations to figure out how fast the car was actually going, and then they can, I guess, give you additional tickets if you were going too fast. I don't know. But the idea is that it all is based in the idea of analyzing data and looking for patterns. And I think that's what we just did fairly well. So I hope this helped, and we'll catch you in class and we'll go further.